Here's what's coming up in the Category 5.tv newsroom. A man hid the keys to $59 million worth of Bitcoin with his fishing gear, which got thrown out and incinerated while he was in jail. Firefox has turned on encrypted-DNS by default to thwart snooping ISPs. Automatic pet feeding systems could starve your pet in the event of a failure. Musicians have algorithmically generated every possible melody and released them to the public domain. Stick around. The full details are coming up later in the show.
This is the Category 5.tv newsroom, covering the week's top tech stories with a slight Linux bias.
I'm Sasha Rickman, joined this week by Robbie Ferguson.
All right, Sasha. Well, some quick honorable mentions this week. Let's get into it. Pioneering African-American NASA mathematician Katherine Johnson has passed away. I want to get into a little bit about her story. And as Johnson she calculated the rocket trajectories and Earth orbits for NASA's early space missions. She was portrayed in the 2016 Oscar-nominated film Hidden Figures, and the film tells the story of an African-American woman whose math skills helped to put U.S. astronauts John Glenn into orbit around the Earth in 1962. Miss Johnston verified the calculations made by new electronic computers before his flight. Imagine that. Computers were brand new at the time.
So they were like, human, check this data.
So we had to verify that data, and there she was, verifying it, making sure that the math was correct from this new fandangled device, right? Miss Johnson, had previously calculated the trajectories for the space flight of Alan Shepard, the first American in space. Such was her skill and reputation that Glenn had asked her specifically to be a part of his mission and refused to fly unless she verified the calculations. She also helped to calculate the trajectory from the 1969 Apollo 11 flight to the moon. Now, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine describes Miss Johnson as a leader from NASA's pioneering days. He says Miss Johnson helped our nation enlarge the frontiers of space, even as she made huge strides that also opened doors for women and people of color in the universal human quest to explore space. Her dedication and skill as a mathematician helped put humans on the moon, and before that, made it possible for our astronauts to take the first steps in space that we are now following on a journey to Mars. Here in 2020. Miss Johnson was born in a small town in West Virginia in 1918. She excelled academically. She graduated from high school at just 14 years old and from university at 18. NASA notes that her academic achievements were particularly impressive, quote, in an era when school for African Americans normally stopped at 8th grade for those who could indulge that luxury. To think of education as a luxury at that time. Just an astonishing woman. After working as a teacher and being a stay-at-home mom, Miss Johnson began working for NASA's predecessor, the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. They called it NACA at the time. She started working there in 1953. Johnson died at a retirement home in Newport, February 24th, at the age of 101. Lived a long life. Bridenstine described her as, quote, an American hero, and he stated that her pioneering legacy will never be forgotten. Since we're already on the subject of mankind traveling to the stars, the Los Angeles City Council has approved a SpaceX permit to lease 19 acres of land in the city's port for 20 years for a Starship rocket facility. SpaceX's new rocket factory will be for its massive next-generation rocket called Starship. The rocket so far has been developed at SpaceX's facilities in Texas and Florida, but the new location adds capacity for SpaceX within driving distance to its headquarters outside of Los Angeles International Airport, and that's where the majority of their staff actually work. That's 6,000 employees. In an outline of plans described by government officials, SpaceX's facility will include multiple buildings for manufacturing, such as blacksmith shops and machining. Los Angeles officials say that SpaceX's plan will actually refurbish dilapidated facilities with a history of vacancy and vandalism, and, quote, has the potential to create 130 aerospace jobs. The facility itself would be a large tent-like structure, similar to those that Tesla was using to ramp up their production of the cars in recent years. The port location provides SpaceX with immediate access to water. That's a key transportation item for them, for their immense rocket, because they need to get that from a production facility to the launch site in either Texas or Florida. So SpaceX currently moves Falcon 9 rockets across the highway on super long trucks. But Starship and its super heavy booster would be so large, they wouldn't be able to transport that by the road. So the water is going to play a big part in that. Mm-hmm. Researchers have developed an algorithm that could stop self-driving vehicles from getting into crashes and traffic jams. The algorithm divides the ground beneath the machines into a grid. The robots learn their position through technology similar to GPS and coordinate their own movements together through sensors that assess where there's free space to move. Northwestern engineers Michael Rubenstein says, the robots refuse to move to a spot until that spot is free and until they know that no other robots are moving to that same spot. They are careful and reserve a space ahead of time. Rubenstein's team tested their algorithm on a swarm of 100 robots set up in their lab. To cut out any distractions, the robots were only allowed to sense 3 or 4 of their closest neighbors. This restricted their vision, and it made the system easier to scale, as the robots can interact locally without needing global information. Think about the impact of that. So the advantage of a swarm of robots is that there is no centralized controller that can disrupt the whole system. This allows them to work together to accomplish any task, even if one of them breaks down. This gives the system an obvious application in warehouse robots, but Rubenstein believes it could actually also cut traffic and collisions for self-driving vehicles on the road. He said, quote, by understanding how to control our swarm robots to form shapes, we can understand how to control fleets of autonomous vehicles as they interact with each other. Finally, cybersecurity researchers today uncovered a new, highly severe hardware vulnerability residing in the widely used Wi-Fi chips manufactured by Broadcom and Cypress. Apparently, they power over 1 billion devices, including smartphones, tablets, laptops, routers, and IoT gadgets. Dubbed Crook, KR00K, the flaw could let nearby remote attackers intercept and decrypt some wireless network packets transmitted over the air by a vulnerable device. The attacker doesn't need to be connected to the victim's wireless network, and the flaw works against vulnerable devices using WPA2 personal or WPA2 enterprise protocols with AES CCMP encryption. ESET researchers said, quote, "Our tests confirmed some client devices by Amazon, Echo, Kindle, Apple, the iPhone, iPad, MacBook, Google's Nexus device, Samsung's Galaxy devices, Raspberry Pi's Pi 3, and Xiaomi's Redmi, as well as some access points by Asus and Huawei, were vulnerable to crook." Now, the attack relies on the fact that when a device suddenly gets disconnected from the wireless network, the Wi-Fi chip clears the session key in the memory and it sets it to 0, but see, the chip inadvertently transmits all data frames left in the buffer with an all-zero encryption key even after the disassociation. So it's actually pushing out that data without encryption. So therefore, of course, an attacker in a near proximity to vulnerable devices can use the flaw to repeatedly trigger disassociation by sending de-authentication packets over the air to capture more data frames, quote, potentially containing sensitive data, including DNS, ARP, ICMP, HTTP, TCP, and TLS packets. Basically, it's like a man in the middle without actually having to be in the middle. Besides this, since the flaw also affects chips embedded into wireless routers, the issue also makes it possible for attackers to intercept and decrypt network traffic transmitted from connected devices that are not vulnerable to crook, either attached or using different Wi-Fi chips. So consider that if you are connecting to a Wi-Fi hotspot whose hotspot is vulnerable, you are susceptible to crook. Apple has already released patches for its users. Some should have issued advisories or security patches at the time of the publication, and other vendors are still testing the issue against their devices. Watch for patches to mitigate this problem via software or firmware updates for your device.
Wow, thank you. Let's get into the top stories we're following this week. In a world where various mass breaches dictate the use of strong, randomized passwords more than ever, reliable and secure credentials management is paramount in 2020. One Irish drug dealer has evidently learned the lesson the hard way. This week, the Irish Times reported the sad tale of Clifton Collins, a 49-year-old cannabis grower from Dublin. Collins quietly grew and sold his product for 12 years, and he amassed a small fortune by using some of that revenue to buy bitcoins around 2011 and 2012, before the price of cryptocurrency soared. But in 2017, state authorities on a routine overnight patrol spotted and then arrested Collins with roughly $2,000 of cannabis in his car. The man quickly earned himself a 5-year jail sentence. As part of authorities' investigation, Ireland's Criminal Assets Bureau discovered and confiscated 12 Bitcoin wallets belonging to Collins, totaling nearly $59 million, reportedly the biggest financial case in CAB's 25-year history. There was only one problem. CAB couldn't access the accounts because Collins had lost the keys. Nervous about having a ton of money tied up in a single wallet, Collins diversified in 2016 by splitting his 6,000 bitcoins across 12 newly created wallets. And to further secure this fortune, Collins hid a piece of paper containing the access codes inside a fishing rod case at his home. Unfortunately, a separate criminal broke into Collins' home in 2017 and cleared his belongings. And upon Collins' arrest, his former home was cleared out by his landlord, with left behind belongings taken to a dump. Dump workers told state police they remember seeing fishing gear, but waste from this particular dump is sent to Germany and China and incinerated by procedure. The fishing rod case has been missing ever since. Collins told the Irish police that he has had time to come to terms with the loss of the money and regarded it as punishment for his own stupidity.
This makes me want to cry.
Right, okay.
Wow.
So that money would not have been his in the end, which is why he's kind of okay with losing it, I think.
Oh my goodness.
Like,
but
he's not
dude,
upset about it.
Oh,
Because he's been caught. Yeah,
back up. Where are your backups?
right.
I understand the idea.
In the lure box. The tackle box, is that what they call it? Tackle box with backups. Fishing rod for the main.
Believe me, I understand the idea, the concept behind a paper wallet.
Yeah.
But paper wallet as a term doesn't necessarily mean that you have to print it on a piece of paper, which is susceptible to everything.
Yeah.
A paper wallet, think about it this way, an offline wallet, right? Like it could be an encrypted, GPG encrypted file on your hard drive, which is also Luke's encrypted, and that can be your protection. And then back it up.
You know what?
60.
I am slightly suspicious, actually, of this story, Mr. Collins.
Why?
When you're released from jail, if all of a sudden you disappear, maybe you had...
Excuse me, I'm going fishing.
Yeah. Maybe you had your keys elsewhere.
Oh, boy.
Maybe.
Okay, so where do you keep your crypto keys? So think about, so your wallets and your keys. Your wallet is reasonably easy to recover as long as you know your wallet address.
Mm-hmm.
It's that private key that you're not going to be able to recover if you don't have it. So encryption, I mean, use, can I skip off? Can I skip off the set for a second here, Sasha? I'm jumping over here and I know you guys can't see me, but I just want to grab a device from Kingston Tech. Okay, so Kingston has these guys.
Would not stand up against Incinerator, though.
Wouldn't stand up against an incinerator, but
perfect.
A Data Traveler 2000 has an encryption keypad. So save your GPG encrypted keys on this, encrypted with the keypad, and then back it up to multiple devices. Like, come on. When you've got millions and millions of dollars in Bitcoin, you can afford to buy a Data Traveler 2000. Don't be dumb.
Daft, as they would say. This is Irish. Don't be daft, Mr. Collins.
Don't be a prat.
Oh, goodness.
Come on now.
But,
Right? That just breaks my heart in so many ways, but it's just like, okay, this guy obviously knew his way around the cryptocurrency. I mean, maybe he was just lucky. Maybe he just bought it at the right time and didn't know any better.
Yeah, heard some chattering at the local pub. Evidently, I'm painting a picture of who this guy is. He's sitting there, sipping a pint of Guinness, listening to some...
So I bought 1,000 Bitcoin last week. That'll never be worth anything, they said.
He wrote it down on a napkin.
They're only 20 cents each, they said.
Penny,
oh my
poster.
Goodness. Not to be a Guinness.
I'm going fishing, boys.
Yeah. So the question becomes, okay, so think about it. Where are your keys? Okay, so if you collect cryptocurrency, where are your keys? How are they safe? Do you have a device like a Data Traveler 2000 from Kingston?
I have one.
And if not, get one, okay? Because this is a great device to store your keys on. But I wouldn't just put my files on here. I would also encrypt those files with GPG, right? So you've got multiple layers of encryption. And heck, if you want to Luke's encrypt this as well, triple layer encryption, that's fine. And then you can back that up to multiple devices, create a DD image. I don't care what you do, but you need to have a backup of your keys.
Yes.
And an offline key does not necessarily mean that there's only one copy. No, you can still have backups, but I think that is safer than the paper key. Because the paper key can be picked up by anyone. So that robber, if he recognized it and he also had the wallets, I'm saying I'm just assuming it was probably a woman. But if the robber was to get a hold of the keys, the private keys on paper, as well as the wallets, well, they've got all your $69 billion, whatever it is.
A lot of money.
A lot of money, right?
Right.
So at least with encryption, you can have multiple copies of your file backed up that has your keys, but don't just print them
What a tale
willy-nilly.
this will be for him when he gets out after. I don't know if his sentence is up yet, but when he gets out and he's just talking to somebody who's never met him before and he tells them the tale about how he lost so much money, they'll think that he is lying.
Yeah.
All right. Firefox has begun the process of switching browser users to Cloudflare's encrypted DNS service this week. The change rolls out across the United States in the coming weeks. DNS over HTTPS helps keep eavesdroppers from seeing what DNS lookups your browser is making, potentially making it more difficult for internet service providers or other third parties to monitor what websites you visit. Mozilla's embrace of DNS over HTTPS is fueled in part by concerns about ISPs monitoring customers' web usage. Mobile broadband providers were caught selling their customers' real-time location data to third parties, and internet providers can use browsing history to deliver targeted ads. Wireless and wired internet providers are suing the state of Maine to stop a web browsing privacy law that would require ISPs to get customers' opt-in consent before using or sharing browsing history and other sensitive data. The telecom companies already convinced Congress to eliminate a similar federal law in 2017. With web users already being tracked heavily by companies like Google and Facebook, Mozilla had said it is embracing DNS over HTTPS because, quote, we don't want to see that business model duplicated in the middle of a network, and it's just a mistake to use DNS for those purposes, end quote. Mozilla said in an announcement Tuesday, quote, today we know that unencrypted DNS is not only vulnerable to spying, but is being exploited. And so we are helping the internet to make the shift to more secure alternatives. We do this by performing DNS lookups in encrypted HTTPS connection. This helps hide your browsing history from attackers on the network and helps prevent data collection by third parties on the network that ties your computer to websites you visit, end quote. While Firefox's encrypted DNS uses Cloudflare by default, users can change that to Next DNS in the Firefox setting or manually enter the address of another encrypted DNS service. Firefox users can also disable the new default setting if they don't want to use any of the encrypted DNS options. Google's plan for encrypted DNS in Chrome, which is still in the experimental phase and hasn't been deployed to everyone, is a little different from Mozilla's. Instead of automatically switching users to a DNS provider chosen by Google, Chrome sticks with whichever DNS provider the user has selected. If the user-selected DNS provider offers encrypted lookups and is in the list of providers, Chrome automatically upgrades the user to that DNS provider's encrypted service. If the user-selected DNS provider isn't in the list, Chrome makes no changes.
See, that makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
Don't touch my DNS settings, browser.
Haha.
Swessig. No. I mean, we're gonna divide the community right now. My belief is that my web browser should not touch my DNS. It shouldn't touch my IP address. It shouldn't touch my default gateway, right? You're all agreeing with that, so why is it touching my DNS? My browser should be subject to my operating system's DNS settings. My operating system should be making these decisions. Ubuntu should be saying, hey, we're going to try to encourage our users to use HTTPS for DNS queries. My browser should never be allowed to override my DNS.
Right. I see what you're saying.
That's my opinion. My browser is to be able to surf the web based on the settings which I have set in my operating system for for my TCP stack, for my DNS stack, for my gateway.
Now, what about a consumer or a user who isn't as knowledgeable as you? Would this suit them?
I think that is the exception to where I think this works.
Yeah.
I think this works for the average Windows user, we'll say, like the average home user who just bought a laptop from the Future Shop.
Yes.
From Walmart and fires it up and installs Firefox, hopefully, because they're not going to use Edge because they're smarter than that at least.
Yes.
Right? But you trust your browser. And so that user, sure, I mean, use HTTPS. But here's my problem is that I have a Pi-hole.
That's right, you do.
Oh, I have a DNS server on my network that is on a Odroid XU4 and a Cloud Shell 2. That Pi-hole powered device, so Pi-hole is the operating system, it's a DNS server. It uses By9 and it controls the flow of DNS through my network. So if my kids go to something that daddy says is objectionable, it will block it. So what Firefox is saying is, I don't care what daddy says, I'm going to go around what daddy says and I'm going to go directly to Cloudflare. And if whatever the kids type in, I don't care because I'm Firefox.
I know what's what.
Yeah. So I'm going to circumvent your Pi-hole. Every time I say it, I laugh. It's called Pi-hole, okay? It's a DNS server using By9.
It's funny.
Yeah. So I block things like advertisements, pornography, things like gambling sites and stuff extreme violence. Even stuff that I just think that the kids should maybe approach me about if they need access to it. Right. Just so that I can explain why they might want to be careful on those sites.
Yeah.
So I try to control those things, not from a control freak perspective, but from I want to be a parent who protects my children in this connected world. And Firefox is saying, you know what?
Yeah.
And I hate that. So if my kids are using Firefox, they are circumventing the settings that daddy set up to protect my kids. That I don't like. So but I do understand for the average person who goes into Walmart and buys a laptop and installs Firefox, this is safer.
Right.
Because nobody needs to know what URLs you are going to.
Right. And like Sasha from 2009, I don't even know when I started the show. Sasha from 2011 wouldn't have known anything about technology. Like I wouldn't have known. I would have just walked into a store, picked up a computer, brought it home, plugged it in, and probably would have believed any pop-up that showed up on my computer. Right? Yeah. And so those are the people that need to be, right?
No, absolutely. And but like the adults, sure. But I mean, there are so many great uses for being able, and I understand that the approach or the promotional end of it, so we'll say the marketing perspective that Firefox is using is that this protects you because now your internet service provider can't see what domain you go to. So if you punch in a pornographic website into your URL bar, your ISP knows that.
Right.
But so does daddy. And so daddy can say, I don't want my kids to see that.
Yes.
I want to protect them from that. So please, Firefox, don't turn that off.
Yes.
I have to be able to see those domains. So that's why I have a problem with it. I agree that HTTPS is important, but there are times when maybe Google's approach is better.
Right.
Because Google is saying, if you already have something set in Chrome, in your browser, in your operating system, we will honor that, but we'll try to switch to HTTPS. So Google is saying, if you have a Pi-hole, I'll still go through your Pi-hole, but then daddy can set the Pi-hole's DNS server to an HTTPS server so the ISP cannot see what my family is putting in. So daddy can still see it because the browser no longer has the power to override. But the ISP cannot because my Pi-hole, which is the override of my systems,
see, that is good.
Is able to direct. Okay.
Google
so I can make that decision because I'm smart enough.
Yeah.
You're smart enough to make that decision. So there should be a process that Firefox has, for some reason, forgotten to put into place. There should be a process of qualifying, is this user capable of making these decisions for themselves?
Yes.
Or do we actually need to override for them?
Right.
Okay. That's my perspective. Please comment below. I know we're probably going to have some mixed perspectives here on this topic. But my perspective is from the father who just wants to protect his kids.
I like it. Thank you. Comment below. We have to take a quick break. More of this week's top tech stories are coming up. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Owners of a device designed to release food for pets say their animals were left hungry during a week-long system failure. In this instance, the device was one from PetNet. However, such devices are being trusted by pet owners. PetNet allows owners to schedule and control feeding via a smartphone app. One pet owner tweeted, "My cat starved for over a week," while others complained about other hardware issues. Quote, "My 3 Gen 2 feeders constantly jam and won't dispense food," wrote another. Some expressed relief that the feeders were now back online. PetNet has 2 Twitter accounts. The official one has not tweeted since August 2019, but the support account issued 4 tweets between last week and now about the problems experienced. In its first tweet, it said a system outage was affecting second-generation devices and asked customers not to switch off their feeder even if it appeared to be offline. It said automatic feeds would, quote, "still dispense." 4 days later, it tweeted again to say that it hoped to release more information soon. On Friday, it said its smart feeders were, quote, "returning online," and a system reset was in progress. Stuart Miles, founder of the tech site Pocketlint, says, quote, "As we go towards a more automated home, you have to acknowledge that somewhere along the line, things will fall over. Robots and automated systems have hiccups along the way. It's something we need to get used to," end quote. This particular outage, though, points to a need for pet owners to have a backup plan. A friend or family member to check in on the pets every couple of days may be all it takes to ensure that if tech fails, a human is there to ensure things are safe and cared for.
Yeah, it makes sense. It really reminds me of the Tesla automated autonomous vehicles.
Yes.
And how there have been some crashes, and it's while they're watching a movie or talking on the phone or like.
This is what, okay, so this is why I don't think robots are going to take over the world and all the humans are going to.
Well, they totally are.
No, well, they need us. Robots need people as much as people need robots.
We got to keep them in check.
You can have an automated cat feeder. Like, I think of people I know in my daily life that really could use an automated cat feeder to help assist them in feeding their cat. But they're not going to hightail it out for 2 weeks and assume that the cat's going to be fine with their automated kitty litter cleaner and their automated cat feeder. Like, they're going to stay there. You can't just trust your cat's life to technology kind of ever.
Yeah. I trust technology.
Yes.
But when it comes to life and death, health, wellness, I think it's important for us to still be the human, right?
Yeah.
Like, autonomous vehicles still have a steering wheel for a reason.
Yes.
You're meant to observe what's going on around you.
Yes.
But sit there and relax. Enjoy the music and just kind of look around and enjoy nature for once. Be a passenger. But as soon as you start swerving toward the guardrail,
be like,
grab a hold of the damn steering wheel and take control.
Right. I honestly don't think that the pet feeder company is at fault in this. Systems go offline.
They are. They totally are. But our complacency in trusting a digitally connected device to provide life-giving food
Right.
to our pets
Yes.
is a problem.
Right. They didn't say, hey, leave your cat alone for a week.
No. Well, maybe they did. I didn't see the
Oh, yeah,
marketing material, but
I hope you didn't.
understand this is a connected device that if Wi-Fi goes down, if internet goes down, if their servers go down, which is what happened here, your pets will not get fed.
Right.
Think about that for a second. So we need to still make sure, like I set an automatic plant feeder
Yes.
when I go away for my annual vacation. Okay. And it feeds my cucumbers and it keeps my garden fed.
Yeah.
But my sister-in-law still checks in for us.
Right.
Every couple days, she goes in and waters the plants and make sure everything's working.
Right.
Because I don't want to come back to a bunch of dead cucumbers.
Just in case something happens.
Don't just willy-nilly trust the tech. We can as a convenience.
Yeah.
But please don't trust it to give life.
I would never trust a robot to keep me alive without human intervention. Like,
you say that now, but wait till you're 95.
No, there will be people there,
There
though.
will be nurses.
There will be people
Yes,
there checking
exactly.
to make sure the robots are doing the right thing.
Or Pepper. It could be Pepper.
Oh, Pepper.
She's so cute.
Pepper can be my nurse. Okay. 2 programmer musicians wrote every possible melody in existence to a hard drive in MIDI format, copyrighted the whole thing, and then released it all to the public domain in an attempt to stop musicians from getting sued. Programmer, musician, and copyright attorney Damian Reel, along with musician-programmer Noah Rubin, sought to stop copyright lawsuits that they believe stifle the creative freedom of artists. Often in copyright cases for song melodies, if the artist being sued for infringement could have possibly had access to the music they're accused of copying, even if it was something they listened to just once, they can be accused of subconsciously infringing on the original content. One of the most notorious examples of this is Tom Petty's claim that Sam Smith's Stay With Me sounded too close to Petty's I Won't Back Down. Smith eventually had to give Petty co-writing credits on his own chart-topping song, which entitled Petty to royalties. Defending a case like that in court can cost millions of dollars in legal fees, and the outcome is never assured. Reel and Rubin hope that by releasing the melodies publicly, they'll prevent a lot of these cases from standing a chance in court. In a recent talk about the project, Reel explained that to get their melody database, they algorithmically determined every melody contained within a single octave. To determine the finite nature of melodies, Reel and Rubin developed an algorithm that recorded every possible 8-note, 12-beat melody combo. This used the same basic tactic that hackers use to guess passwords, churning through every possible combination of notes until none remained. Reel says this algorithm works at a rate of 300,000 melodies per second.
Oh.
I know. Once a work is committed to a tangible format, it's considered copyrighted, and in MIDI format, notes are just numbers. All of the melodies they've generated, as well as the codes for the algorithm that generated them, are available as open source materials on GitHub, and the datasets are on the Internet Archive.
Fantastic.
Thank you, guys.
That is so cool.
Oh, my goodness.
And this should go into the files of why didn't we think of this before?
These guys should get a super award. Like, they should actually get a small royalty from all of the royalties that these other big bully musicians.
Yeah. So now I want to download the entire MIDI set. Attribute Eterol orchestral to all the MIDI notes and resequence everything, add some drum loops, and let's see what we come up with.
I think this is great.
I think it's obviously novel, but it's also a brilliant way to thwart. Like, this is the equivalent, copyright trolls are the equivalent of patent trolls in many, many ways. So, that sounds, there's only so many chords we can use in our, 4/4 and 3/4 time.
Yeah.
And they do start, like, I mean, Bare Naked Ladies, you know, GDC, 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 E minor. Like, how many songs are going to fall into that?
And you can creatively have a thought that is similar to somebody else's very creative, unique thought.
Sure.
But you didn't hear it even. Like, you can... People have said things that I've said, I'm sure, without hearing me say them. They're not stealing my thoughts. I just feel like in this particular case, especially the example, Tom Petty was being very petty.
Nice one.
See?
I think that since the only person who is able to create unique melodies is Sia these days, it just comes down to, like, seriously, there's only so many melodies that can be made, and we're coming up on a time where in recorded history there have been so many recordings made that we're going to start to see overlap. And we have seen that. This is a cool way for them to say, haha, we own them all. We've released them to the public domain. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Links below.
Yes.
Go download the MIDI files, sequence them, use them,
Yeah.
create your tracks.
Be creative. Yeah. Big thanks to Roy W. Nash and our community of viewers for submitting stories to us this week. Thanks for watching the Category 5.tv newsroom. Don't forget to like and subscribe for all your tech news with a slight Linux bias. And if you appreciate what we do, become a patron at patreon.com/newsroom. From the Category 5.tv newsroom, I'm Sasha Rickman.
And I'm Robbie Ferguson.